still got stupid Onision's picture on my screen. Let me just go ahead and remove that. Well, I guess it's another debate. Meh. I am joined by, I don't know if you're called SJW Debates or Science Lad or what.
You can call me Justin.
I'm joined by Justin from, what's your channel name?
It's called SJW Debates right now.
Oh, okay. I'm joined by Justin from SJW Debates. LSP was supposed to be here, but I guess he just dipped out. I will turn off Streamlabs right now, but I want to say thank you to Deneen H, who says hi, and Brett something lead, I guess, who pledged 20 on Patreon. Thank you. But I will turn off notifications and text-to-speech and all that for now, and I will read donations later on in the stream. So what would be a good starting point, do you think?
Well, I think one of the things that got us like all into this really fun stuff is it was a while back that we kind of agreed to start this, and you had an exchange with Legend of Phoenix, and that's kind of what I wanted to focus on here. So you had a tweet where you said that there is zero evidence that transition surgery is the best treatment for a mental issue, and a lot of stuff along those lines. So that's kind of where I wanted to start with.
That's fine. We can start there. And yeah, that's something I'll stick to. Nothing short of just it makes a person feel better. It's not a treatment for gender dysphoria.
So this tweet makes me think two things. One, that if you saw evidence and saw scientific studies that said that transitioning was actually one of the best treatments for gender dysphoria, that you would change your mind. And two, it makes me think that you've done some research yourself to see whether or not that's the case.
I've done a little bit of research, not a ton, but I've gone into it a little bit. So if you have something to show me, I'll definitely take a look at it.
I do. I'm pasting something. I'm pasting a link to you in the chat right now. So it's what we know. So it's a Cornell University page, and it's what does the scholarly research say about the effect of gender transition on transgender well-being? It has, I think, 70-something studies here. See, below are, and of them, it says 52 studies found that gender transition improves the well-being of transgender people. 4 studies contained mixed or null findings, and 17 consist of literature reviews. So just like going over the rest of the studies. So right now we have a 52 to 4 ratio of studies that say that transitioning, either medically or surgically or just socially, improves outcomes for gender dysphoria.
Now, why do you think that would be?
I think that
you read the studies, and I'm not going to go through it on stream because I would just make for boring listening.
Well, you don't want to go through 54 studies in detail on stream? That's
not really, no.
Oh, okay. I guess if that's the way you want to run your stream, that's fine.
But what was the outcome? Like, did it just make them feel better to be in the body they were born to be in?
Yeah.
Or did it actually improve their mental status?
So this is definitely, I mean, I can't get into 52 studies, but the overall, there's always going to be, different strategies, different outcomes that they were looking at, different variables that they were considering. But the overall view is that in regards to gender dysphoria in particular, so gender dysphoria, if you don't know, it's not the same thing as being trans. Gender dysphoria is you have a psychological issue with how you see yourself and how you want to act and how you want to present yourself to the world and what you actually think you are. So, and that can include the way society treats you, the way that your family treats you, and things like that. And it does alleviate gender dysphoria by quite a bit. And to my knowledge, there's nothing better than transitioning up to and including surgical transitions to help alleviate gender dysphoria.
Okay, well, like I said, I didn't read the studies, but what we can kind of imply is that they're taking a physical, what's the wording I should use here? They're taking a physical effect for a mental problem.
Well,
the same could be argued, because there was a story not too long ago of a woman whose doctor made her blind because she felt she should be blind. So is that the kind of thing we should do?
Well, it's really tough to go off anecdotes like that, because if that was the case and that was the worst possible outcome in that anecdote, what does that say about, does that have anything to do with the overall broad treatment of transitioning or any sort of medical field? So it doesn't help to go off anecdotes unless you're looking for, philosophical arguments. What we can do in medical research is, what does the overwhelming majority of the research say? What is the typical outcome for this? And what is the consensus in the medical community right now as to what treatment is going to affect what disorder the best? So you're always going to have a non-0% of people who, with any sort of with any procedure, you're going to have a non-zero percentage of people who are dissatisfied with it, or it doesn't go the way they want, or the surgeon did a bad job, or the medical practitioner was having an off day, or something like that. So the best you can do is say, what is typically, for this disorder, the best possible treatment that we can do?
And you're going with that, you say it's surgery that effectively destroys the body and destroys a person's mental condition. You say that's the best way to handle it.
Well, though that's pretty loaded language. I definitely wouldn't agree with that. So any surgery is going to, quote unquote, destroy the body. Knee surgeries destroy your body. Shoulder replacement surgeries destroy your body. But the effect.
But there's not a 40% suicide rate after knee surgery.
Well, yeah, neither after transgender surgery either, or gender confirmation surgery.
There is.
There isn't.
That's been a thing for a long time, that there was a high suicide rate with pre-op and post-op trans people.
So I'm familiar. I guarantee I would bet money that I know which two studies that you're referencing here. So when you say 40% suicide rate, what are you referencing?
I'm looking at the study from the University or National Library of Medicine.
National Library of Medicine. Can you link that to me real quick?
Yeah.
Or I can look it up. National Library of Medicine.
I'll slap it in the chat. It just fucks with the thing on stream.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. It says the results are the suicide attempt rate amongst transgender people ranges from 32 to 50% across the countries. Gender-based victimization, discrimination, bullying, violence, and being rejected by family and friends. Community harassment by intimate partner, family members, police, and public. Discrimination, ill treatment at mental health systems are the major risk factors that influence suicidal behavior.
So just on the results of this abstract, and it looks like we have access to the full thing for free, which is pretty cool. There's two things with that. One, suicide attempt rate is not the same thing as suicide rate. Like, you can't use that as a proxy measurement for a bunch of reasons. I know that seems like semantics, that I'm just splitting hairs, but no, a suicide attempt rate and suicide rate are very, very different things, and you shouldn't conflate the two. And two, it doesn't say victimization, discrimination, bullying, violence. It doesn't say anything here that transitioning was one of the factors that led to suicidal behavior.
I didn't say that was a factor. I said that is the suicide rate amongst trans people.
Yeah, so what do we want to... We hopefully want that to go down, correct?
Well, I would hope so, but
yeah.
That's clearly not the case.
Clearly not the case from what? What are you basing that on? This study doesn't say that.
And the study, the actual study is called Suicide and Suicidal Behavior Amongst Transgender People.
Yep, I'm looking at it right now. The study doesn't say what you're saying it says. It doesn't say that the suicide rate changes or goes up, or at least in the results section that I'm seeing right here, it doesn't make any mention of pre- and post-transition. So there's no claim to be made there.
Okay. My claim was that pre- and post-op transgenderism has a high suicide rate.
I probably wouldn't disagree with that, no. The question is, why, and what are the best methods we can do to stop it?
You can never really know why someone commits suicide unless they leave a detailed note.
No.
Isn't always the case. And most suicides are fucking overdoses.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't really know why. It could be anything from just being unhappy with yourself to being bullied, which makes you unhappy with yourself.
Well, yeah, then, so what social scientists will do, they'll try to get across these. So one, they'll use suicide attempt rates, because obviously you can't take surveys of people who have committed suicide. And so they'll say, okay, here's the suicide attempt rate among this population, in this case transgender persons, and they'll try to extrapolate some sort of factors that, what are the things that, impact you the most? Why did you attempt suicide in this previous instance? And we can guess, we can make educated guesses: victimization, discrimination, harassment by intimate partner, family members, police and public discrimination. We can make educated guesses and extrapolations from what we see in suicide attempt rate surveys, and we can say, well, maybe these can be a good predictor of actual suicide completions in the future for this population. I mean, there's nothing there. You're never going to get anything perfect, but all the results that I've seen, all these studies that I've seen that says that at least internally, the transitioning either surgically or socially or medically improves your overall well-being, and therefore improves your mental health, at least in regards to gender dysphoria. Now, of course, there's still a ton of other things that can get you down. There's depression and all that really fun stuff.
You become depressed knowing that you made yourself sterile and put yourself thousands of dollars in debt.
You could.
That could be a suicide thing too. But the fact is, you're still implying my case is a common one, which I'm not trying to imply, just using it as an example.
I got you. It's okay.
If you look at it that way, it's still a post-op trans suicide.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the Heritage Foundation?
I am, unfortunately.
Well, here's one of their studies from who is that? Ryan T. Anderson, PhD. It says transitioning does not help. I mean, this isn't going to be a very interesting stream if we're just exchanging studies.
Well, here's a really cool part. I actually have that exact study and that exact thing. I talked about it at length in my video, and so
I'm very quiet.
Oh, okay. I'll come that up. Let's see. Bring this up. Just a little bit better, guys. Say something.
Hello, Justin's chat. Hope that helps.
Host is really loud. It's not just super quiet. I can't get this right, guys. So let me try this again. Lower my microphone
OBS?
volume. Yep.
Just try and boost the desktop volume.
Yeah, that's what I just did. Is this a little bit better, guys? Better? Awesome. Sweet. So I'm really familiar with the article here. It's not a study, it's an article. And one of the the main thing that he uses in this is a study, the Sweden study, which if you've been around, if you've debated this at all, Sweden study is going to pop up. And it's this cohort study, a very long study. It's a good study, really good design of the study. I have nothing issues with what it says, but this guy makes some really, really obvious mistakes, and I don't think he's coming at this in good faith. Like, I think he has results that he wants to get out of the study, and he's manipulating to his means. So, and I'm happy to go over that with you.
Let me pull this up here. The Sweden study.
Yeah, Google Sweden transgender study. It's probably going to be the first thing that pops up. And to my knowledge, the last time I looked at
it, the Heritage Foundation is the first thing that popped up.
Well, that's not a good sign.
Do you know the name of the actual study?
Give me a sec here. Well, it's linked in here. So the most thorough, it's linked in the study you just said, where it says most thorough follow-up of sex reassigned people. That's going to link to the Sweden study. So,
hold up.
So here's what he says: extending over 30 years. Conducted in Sweden, where the culture is strongly supportive of the transgendered, documents their lifelong mental unrest. 10 to 15 years after surgical reassignment, the suicide rate of those who had undergone sex reassignment surgery rose to 20 times that of comparable peers. Now, who do you think the comparable peers he's talking about is?
Normal people? I don't know.
Well, cis people, yeah. So if you're going to say that 10 to 15 years after surgical reassignment, and you're making the claim that sex reassignment doesn't help, what you need to do is compare two groups of trans people, or people with gender dysphoria. One group who gets the surgery, who gets the transition gender affirmation treatment, and one group who doesn't. That's the only way you can make the claim that Anderson is trying to make here. What they did is they compared transgender people who got surgeries to cis people. You can't make any sort of affirmative claim about the effectiveness of this procedure when you're not comparing the relevant populations.
Well, I think the issue with that would be is that both the pre-op and post-op suicide rates are already so high that if you compared pre-op trans to post-op trans, there wouldn't be much of a difference.
There could be, though. And this study doesn't say that. In fact, it says a few things almost to the exact opposite. So if I'm looking down here, I'm just looking, let's see, results, mortality. Okay, and it does say, this study says exactly, it says that, their suicide rate is a lot higher than cis people, but there's a couple things you really need to pay attention here, and I'm trying to look for it. I'm looking for it on my stream right now. Let's see.
Okay. I suppose I should pull this up for the chat if they're interested.
Yeah, let's see. Like I said, I go over this in my video, so I know it's here. Basically, they said that this correlation between high suicides that are way higher than the general population, that kind of stopped after 1989. So the study was conducted, well, not conducted, but the data was gathered from 1970 to 2003. And so After 1989, we stopped seeing those correlations in the data. And the factors they cite for that are, for example, increased, just the procedures got better. Like the medical procedures surrounding this surgery got a lot better. We also see improved societal outcomes. So this guy says in his article that Sweden loves trans people, but in 1970, do you think their attitudes were the same as they are today? Are they going to be overwhelmingly supportive in 1970? And the study says no, they weren't. They give references to what the attitudes for Swedish people are towards transgender people, and the reference they give says that no, way back in the 1970s, they were a lot lower than they were today, and that's probably why, after 1989, we stopped seeing that heavy correlation that the study says that they found in the data overall.
Well, okay. Let's try to set this in any other scenario.
Sure.
Are you a pro-gun guy or not?
I have a gun. I'll say that.
Okay. Well, that's fine. Let's put it into a thing where it was 20 times the average population gun owners commit suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you go, there might be something going on there that's a little suspicious that it's so much higher than the average population?
Of course.
So why is that not the case with trans people?
Because we have done these things, and you actually brought up one of the studies that said that one of the reasons their suicide rate is so high is because of bullying, discrimination, outside factors. People telling them that, hey, no, you're never going to be the thing that you feel like you are. So and those are the big factors. So we did that thing you just said, that hypothetical. That's real. We have studies for that. And what are the people who diagnose gender dysphoria? What do they say to the best treatment? Well, let's get you transitioning for a couple of reasons. One, maybe that you, if your outside body matches what you feel inside, you're going to have much better outcomes. And two, maybe the outside world sees you as what you are and they affirm your gender identity. Maybe that's going to stop discrimination. Maybe that's going to go a long way towards making you feel better. So we've done these studies. We've looked at what these factors might be. And one of the best treatments for gender dysphoria is transitioning.
Okay, so let's go off that one of the best things to do for gender dysphoria is to transition.
Mm-hmm.
When is the right time to transition?
It's really tough to tell. It's going to be extremely individual. Some people know when they're very, very young, and some people don't really find out until they're in their 20s, 30s, sometimes even up to 40 and 50. So it's based on the knowledge, based on the research that I'm familiar with, it's when it's consistent and strong. Is if you're going to go all the way to transitioning in terms of surgery, like you're making that permanent choice, it's got to be there for a long time. I don't know the exact length of time it's supposed to be there, but it's got to be very persistent over a long period of time and a very, very strong in its presence.
Okay, so if transitioning is hands down the best treatment, right?
Mm-hmm. As far as we know, yep.
Why would the suicide rate be so high afterwards? If they're perfect and they're treated and they're okay, why is their suicide rate so high?
A couple of reasons. One,
it's not really a debate. Post-op suicide rate is very high.
Based on what? Based on this study in the Sweden study?
Based on real life.
I mean,
like I don't know.
Study not real life?
It's 20 times higher than the average population.
All right, I'll say I found that. So, in accordance, the overall mortality rate was only significantly increased for the group operated before 1989. So I have it pulled up on my stream right now. I finally found it. I don't know why it took me that long. But however, the latter might be also explained by improved health care for transsexual persons during the 90s, along with altered societal attitudes towards persons with different gender expressions. So after 1989, so that 20 times post-surgery, that's for the data as a whole from 1970 to 2003. I don't know why I keep looking at my mic instead of the camera. The trend, that 20 times higher, that was for 1970 through 2003, the data as a whole. But when you separate parts of the data, when you do more linear regressions and really get into what exactly the factors are, after 1989, those correlations start to get a lot more disparate. We don't see them as much as we did. And the reasons, according to this study, are because of altered societal attitudes and increased healthcare. Or that's their main variable that's why they think it's there.
So what did it drop to after 89?
It's hard to say.
This study doesn't say
The
that.
study doesn't say that because the data collection stopped in 2003, so we don't know.
So if the data collection stopped in 2003, when did the study stop?
I think
2010.
so. I think it was published in 2011, and I think what they didn't. I don't think it was a longitudinal study. I think it was they took basically just medical data that they had, because Sweden is really good about collecting data, and they just took those medical files and did it that way. I could be wrong on that, and if I'm wrong on that, please correct me.
Well, okay, let's work off that framework.
Mm-hmm.
We'll say that there's nothing to prove that it did drop after 1989, because you just said that you can't tell me what it did.
Right.
And then we're kind of left guessing till 16 years ago, from 16 years ago on. So from 2003 to now, we're just kind of left guessing. So there's absolutely nothing that says that transitioning makes you not want to commit suicide,
except for those 52 studies that I just gave you. I mean, that does that. I think that kind of counts, right?
Let me pull this up here. Shit, where did I put it? Is that it? Is that it? Oh boy, sorry chat. Cancel. Pull that up. Put that there. Move this over here.
So if you don't want to go through the individual studies themselves, you can just look at the research findings. And if you don't trust the research findings, that's fine. If you don't want to trust that Cornell to tell them all for you, they have all the studies there, and you can look at them yourself.
I just wanted to pull this up so I could get the correct verbiage on this.
I got you.
It says 52 studies found out that transitioning improves the well-being of transgender people.
Uh-huh.
Click here to jump to 4 studies that contain blah, 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 blah. So it improved the well-being.
Yep.
But did not cut the suicide rate.
Well, we can't say that. So it's really hard to assess suicide rate because, I mean, if someone is feeling great, where do you put them? Like, we don't have, to the best of my knowledge, we haven't done long-term suicide rate studies other than the Sweden study. That's the only one we have. But what we can say is that it improves their well-being. And I don't think it's unfair to say that if they improve their well-being, their mental state is vastly improved compared to what it was pre-transitioning, I don't think their suicide rate is going to be the same. And I don't think it's unfair for me to make that assumption.
All right, let me try to pull this up here. It's hard to talk and look shit up.
In fact, okay, number 2 on research findings, greater satisfaction, higher self-esteem and confidence, and reduction in anxiety, depression, suicidality, and substance use. So number 2 in the research findings, we have reductions in suicidality.
Pre-response up. Okay. So, can you link me to what you just did? I'm trying to find it, but I'm trying to do like 6 different things.
Yeah, sure. The giant list of things, or
no, what you just read off.
Oh no, it's the top of that page I just showed you. So where it says research findings.
Oh,
so it's just above what the part you read. So it has the research findings up there, and what I just read was number 2.
So, if there's a reduction in suicidal tendencies amongst post-op trans,
yep.
Where's the study on that?
I mean,
it's somewhere in that 52 studies, right? But
I mean, that's what they.
Which one?
I'm gonna guess this is a general trend. And again, we can go into all of those studies, but you set the bar pretty high compared to what you had. So when we came into this, there's zero evidence that transition surgery is the best treatment for a mental issue, and you made that with no studies to back it up, no sources. Now here I am with, well, now I need to go to bat for these 54 studies and tell you which specific ones say.
I was just curious.
I got you. This is what they could be completely wrong, but Cornell University, not exactly a for-profit community college. So I'm going to guess that they have a pretty good understanding of these studies and have a pretty accurate representation of what they say. I could be wrong. I don't know if I'm qualified to go through all these studies and refute them. But
no, that's fine. That's fine. We can just, if we're going to get bogged down in studies, we can move on to something else for now and come back to it.
That's fine. I love getting bogged down in studies, man. I love facts.
Yeah, but that doesn't make for a very interesting stream. That would be more of an off-air Twitter bout.
I got you. That's sure. But is this
so the last thing I posted on trans that really got people up in a twist was trans athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And I said trans people should not be competing with normal women.
with cis women?
Yeah, normal women. They should not be competing with them.
I got SJW in my name. I want to use the nice words, the correct words.
I believe you disagreed with me on that one.
Yep.
Tell me why.
So,
why should trans men who have been men all their lives decide when they're in their mid-30s to transition and just go into competitions and start dominating?
Well, there's no evidence of that second thing happening.
There is.
Like what?
You can look at cyclist records, weightlifting records, and fighting records that trans men go into the field and start dominating. We just saw a news story about a week ago that a trans weightlifter had their title stripped because their T count was so high.
It sounds like then the system's doing its job. That happens in weightlifting quite a bit. So I used to be a power lifter. Don't look at my physique right now. Don't make any judgments on that.
I noticed that because I got the same kind of fat body thing going on too.
So I used to be a power lifter, and so I read a lot of powerlifting literature, and Ed Cohn is like the name in powerlifting. And holy shit, I need to make sure I'm doing this correctly. Ed Cohn.
You're fine.
Please make sure I didn't get that right. Ed Cohn. Because it's been so long. Yeah, there we go. I'm way out of powerlifting. So he actually did the same thing happened to him. So he maintains that he has never in his life taken steroids, but he was disqualified for a lot of his powerlifting competitions because his T count was so high. Now that could happen naturally, and if that's the case, well, how about that woman, the runner? I forgot her name. Who had her title stripped. Now she's only allowed to compete with women, despite the fact that she's not trans. She is a woman. She is a cis woman. But her T levels are so high, even though they're naturally high, they say it's not fair for her to compete. So in the instance of a couple of the most recent stories on weightlifting, so when they say that trans weightlifter shatters records, well, one, it's powerlifting, and if you don't know the name of the sport you're talking about, I'm probably not going to trust your opinion on it too much. And two, I've actually trained a world record powerlifter. That is a 100% fact. The last time I checked, I trained, because I was a personal trainer, I trained a world record powerlifter. Is that impressive to you?
Yeah.
It shouldn't be.
Sure.
So it was in a small local federation, the Southern Powerlifting Federation. He was the only competitor in his age, weights, and division class. So he was 72 years old, competing in full powerlifting in the 198-pound weight class. And so since he was the only one doing it, he has the world record. That is a similar situation to the story that ran about that transgender weightlifter, rather powerlifter from earlier.
She broke 9 world records.
In this one federation. If you look at the overall world records in larger federations, in national and international federations, she wasn't close.
Okay, but was she the only one competing?
No, she wasn't. No, she wasn't the only one competing. She did win, but when you say world record, well, what comes to mind and what a lot of people got really upset about is, oh, this is a national or international, since it's a world record. They broke international records from an international federation, and she didn't. She broke records in a smaller, semi-local organization. That's very different, but that doesn't get that attention-grabbing headline. So
he just entered this competition, beat out all the normal women, and then took the records.
In this local competition, yep. They also trained a lot, and they were a powerlifter before this, and they even, because she got so much abuse, she posted what her lifts used to be, and everything is dropped by 100, 200 pounds.
Yeah, he couldn't keep up in the female or in the male competition,
sure,
so he switched to the female competition.
Sure, he could have. He had good numbers in the male competition too. So right now, the only study that I'm aware of that compares pre and post performance in people who transition is a small study done on runners. So take that with a massive grain of salt, but it's the only study that I'm aware of. And what it basically said that if you are in the 20th percentile competing with men, or I think it was these were adolescents. I think again, I can't remember off the top of my head. Basically, if you were in the 20th percentile competing against men after you transition and after the period, I think it's 1 to 2 years of hormone therapy, you're going to be around that same percentile competing with women. So I really don't like the insinuation that people are just transitioning so they can get better at sports, especially like powerlifting. There's no money or glory to be had in powerlifting. So I don't.
How many male records has that guy broke? He just broke female records, didn't he?
Yeah, probably none.
Yeah, so he transitioned.
Mm-hmm.
So he could break records in the female division. And
you think that's why? Do you think that's why that she transitioned?
100%. I think why he transitioned.
Wow, that's a really bold claim with no evidence to back it up.
I'm just assuming based on the fact that he was a man for X amount of years and then suddenly decided to become a woman right before this thing.
Well, suddenly decided. You're making a ton of assumptions, dude. Like,
I am.
I'm the SJW here. I'm supposed to operate on feelings, and all I'm doing is saying that, man, it really doesn't make any logical sense to say that, well, I want to do good in this local powerlifting federation, so I'm going to upheave my life, undergo hormone replacement therapy, have everybody in my family question me.
Hormone replacement therapy is absolutely reversible.
Well, yeah, but...
Did he have any surgery?
I'm not sure. But that's a ton of shit to do to... What? Win a local powerlifting meet and then have a shit ton of hate directed at you. Like, that doesn't, I wouldn't do that to win so when I was competing in powerlifting, I didn't want to take steroids because that was way too hard on my body. I wasn't willing to do that. So I can't imagine like going through hormone replacement therapy and transitioning and going up on Instagram and saying, hey, I'm trans, I want to share this with you. I can't imagine going through all that just to win a local powerlifting meet.
I can imagine that if someone's a athlete and they really want the win, they'll definitely go through that just to win a local powerlifting meet.
We'll tell you what, when they start going into national competitions and start shattering records there, then we might be able to talk. But right now, we have a single powerlifter who won a local meets with numbers that actually weren't all that astounding to me. Like a 400-pound, I think her deadlift was 400 pounds. There was a 17-year-old cis girl who did that at my last powerlifting meet. So these aren't earth-shattering records. In fact, to the best of my knowledge, in a natural, so a drug-tested, no-gear powerlifting competition. Now, granted, this was a super heavyweight, but there was a woman who did 600-plus pounds. A cis woman who, with no special equipment and who was drug-tested, squatted 600-plus pounds. So these aren't earth-shattering numbers by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay, so let's look at another sport. All right, tennis. Let's look at tennis. All right,
sure.
Who is the best female tennis player?
So I think I know where this is going. Probably Serena Williams. I haven't kept up with it in a while, but
Serena Williams wouldn't place in the top 90 of men.
Probably not, no.
Now, if one of those men decided to transition and become a woman, he would just annihilate Serena, right?
Why?
Because men have certain advantages that women don't have.
Such as?
We have denser bones, thicker muscles, faster reflexes, a difference in fast twitch and slow twitch muscles. We have advantages that women don't have.
So
because we were made to do physical things.
So I'm not sure how much you know about me, but I'm actually going for my master's degree in biomechanics. And that gender differences you just said, for example, fast twitch versus slow twitch muscle fibers, there's gender differences in averages, but they're not really that pronounced. And it's way more, one, that's probably something you're going to be born with. And two, it's going to dictate what sport you go into. So, for example, men who are very, very good long-distance runners have shit fast twitch muscle fibers. They're garbage.
Well, funny you should mention that because I just got a super chat that said the top female in the 200 meter isn't even near the top 1,000 of men.
When you say near, what are you talking about?
I guess not.
Like what, a half second off? which is enormous in terms of like 200-meter times. But do you think she could still outrun 99% of all men? No, we're not talking. Go ahead.
We're talking about athletes.
Of course,
right?
yeah. So when you say that Serena Williams probably couldn't beat the top 90 men, that still means she can beat 90.
I think she lost to the 75th best man in the league.
That still means
terrible too.
So, but we're talking about the absolute top of the top. We're not talking about men versus women here. We're talking about athletes. So, if you
do you want to talk about an average person versus athletes?
Well, I'm saying if we're taking these gender differences and saying that they're so ubiquitous, Serena Williams could still destroy 99% of men in tennis. But when you take her and put her against the best of the best in the men, no, she's probably not going to place in the top 100 or so, but she's still better than 99% of men.
Well, let's talk about averages. Average men versus athletic trained women.
Yep.
Fallon Fox, the trans MMA fighter, who was a man for 35 years.
Yep.
Transitioned to a woman, and then started beating the shit out of women in the cage. And if you watch her fights, they're not trained fights. Like, it looks like just domestic abuse.
Someone's been watching some Joe Rogan. What about that fight she lost?
Well, no, she lost to an average woman, yeah, but she beat the shit out of a lot of normal women too.
Well, yeah, her record I think was 5-1 before she retired. Like, it's not dominating. She lost to
the women she fought. She dominated. She wrecked the fuck out of those women.
That's
that goes to prove
why didn't she
that you can be an average person with a little bit of training and dominate in the women's field.
But she didn't dominate. She lost.
She beat 5 women and lost 1, then quit.
Yeah. So do we say that every person with a record of 5-1 is dominating their sport due to some unseen biological advantages?
It depends on the match. I'd say Wilder dominated last night.
Yeah, I'm not been in UFC.
It's boxing.
You see? Told you.
But yeah, I think that's fair to say.
I think that's a pretty subjective terms of like dominating. Like if she was knocked out in the first 20 seconds of all 5 of those fights, I think a case could be made there. But
I think Fallon Fox broke someone's skull.
Wait, she broke someone's skull.
I think
so an occipital fracture. So which is unheard of in fighting, right? It's unheard of to get a skull injury.
Let me look it up. What was it? Was it in?
I think it was the occipital orbital bone fracture. I think is what she got.
BJJWorld.com, transgender MMA fighter breaks the skull of her female opponent. And where does it say what the actual injury is?
Yeah, notice the loaded language they use. Breaks the skull.
Is the occipital bone not part of the skull?
Yeah.
All of a sudden?
Yeah, but when you say breaks the skull, you have to admit that that's really loaded language. Suffering an occipital fracture, that's a pretty common injury. You didn't split your skull open. Like there's nothing to say that fractures occipital bone. There's no reason why you can't actually put the name of the injury in your title. But no, they went with fractures a skull. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that we could agree that the media is misleading.
Oh, yeah, of course. Why were they misleading towards here? Do you think that they had some kind of ulterior motive and there was some kind of view on this they wanted you to have going in?
Not if it's an accurate portrayal of what happened.
Well,
if she broke the skull of the woman she was fighting, then yeah, I think that's accurate.
So if let's see, if I if I wrote up a story, if I was a journalist and I put out something, football player completely destroys his knee, just completely ruins his knee, and then later on in the story it says that he had a partial ACL tear. Do you think that's a little bit misleading?
Destroying the knee. That's accurate.
Well, it's not destroying the knee. It's an
ACL tear will put you out for a little bit.
Yeah, it will put you out for a little bit, but it's not going to destroy your knee. You had a partial tear out of one of the structures in your knee, an important structure, but something that's honestly you can do without an ACL. Now that's coming from a biomechanics person.
You can do without an ACL, okay.
I mean, and there's some evidence to say that actually ACL. This is way off topic, but ACL surgeries are actually increase osteoporosis in the knee, and that if with proper muscular training that you can actually learn to keep that anterior translation of the tibia from happening. That's far outside of this, but what I wanted to get at there was the language they used was not neutral in any way, shape, or form. And there's lots of people who get, that exact same injury. It's a pretty common injury in the UFC. Occipital fracture. Like, that's a pretty common injury on account of all that kicking in the head that they do.
Okay, but it doesn't. If it was a man versus a man, and they said Anderson Silva broke this other dude's fucking head, I'd be like, oh shit, no kidding.
Yeah.
And even if it was an occipital fracture, it's still breaking the fucker's head.
Yeah, if you want to have the fun language there, yeah. But what would be the? So let's say that exact thing happened. So an exactly identical story, or rather an identical headline came up in Anderson Silva's fight. Breaks the head of Jangles Science Lad, who started UFC fighting this week. So what is the goal of that story? There was a big, strong fighter who did something kind of awesome. Would you think it would be kind of demonizing Anderson Silva in the same way? That he did something wrong?
Yeah, he should know not to go as full force on you.
He shouldn't.
You're not a fucking cage fighter.
Well, no, pretend that I was a fighter. And let's just pretend that I was an actual fighter with training, and I was going in there with, every intent of winning. But that has a very different connotation, though, doesn't it? Like, Silva's just a beast and really strong. And you wouldn't be saying, oh, how dare Silva be trying to hurt people in his UFC fight?
So I'm trying to go with what you're saying, okay?
Yeah, we can get off this exact example if you want to.
I looked up how many skull injuries happen in women's MMA.
Mm-hmm.
Every single article goes right back to the transgender fight, which leads me to believe in women's MMA, it's not that common of a thing.
Or that search results bias things that have lots of view counts. They could, be indicative of either one of those.
Okay, here's a question, or the answer to your one question. The women's world record for the 200 meter is 21.34, and the men's is 20.7.
Yeah, so statistically that's an enormous difference, but how many men do you know who could run 200 meters in 21 seconds?
It depends what's chasing them, I guess.
And what percentage difference is that? Roughly 10-ish%? A roughly 10% difference? Don't make me do math.
I won't, don't worry. Let me pound through a couple of these super chats that have come through.
Mm-hmm.
What I got so far is SJWs are okay with women abuse.
Totally, that's a very honest take of that. Good job.
Well, I mean, when you see Antifa assaulting women in the street, you kind of get that impression.
That's a
Sir Powell for two
that's an
cents.
insane pivot. Good job.
Well, you can rebut it in a second, but we won't get bogged down in that.
All right.
Good work. Keep up the good shit flowing. I don't like that you called my work shit. Rob Schmurder for 10 says, for the gender reassignment surgery, thank you. The Super Saiyan reassignment surgery. My bad. What? Oh, my bad. My dog just freaked out. Spookski for 5 says, the only surgeries trainees need is a lobotomy. And Deneen H for 5 says, hi. Hi, Deneen. But, yeah, when you see Antifa, like, egging women in the face on the street, you think that there's no problem with it.
When I see Antifa egging people in the face on the street, do I think there's no problem with it?
Women?
I think that's really, really far. Let's say that that was a huge problem in Antifa, and the Antifa was absolutely targeting women specifically with eggs, and maybe even more violent means. Would that have any impact on the effectiveness of transitioning for people with gender dysphoria?
Maybe.
Maybe?
You never know.
I mean, I don't see how those two things are connected.
But, so let's go back to the actual substance of that donation. Are you okay with Fallon Fox fighting women?
if she is under medical clearance and she has a doctor and she has a bunch of people who know what they're doing, who says that she has no undue advantage over cis women, yeah, I'm okay with it. I go with what the research says, and I go with medical opinions, and I go with I don't just use my gut to determine these things.
Well, okay. I guess I get what you're saying, but in reality, I don't like the fact that Fallon Fox can go into a cage and just annihilate. Who beat Fallon Fox?
I forgot. I think a fighter with like a 6-4 record that ended up with a 6-4 record. So not a bad fighter by any stretch of the imagination, but also not like the most dominant fighter in women's MMA.
Ashley Evans.
Okay. There we go.
Shit, I forgot what I was saying. I still don't like the fact that you can be a man for all your life, enjoy all the benefits of being a man biologically, different bone density, different fist size. Like, do you consider Buck Angel a man?
Yes.
Do you think Buck Angel could fight men?
Maybe.
Buck Angel's like 5'2".
If we
100-something pounds.
Well, if we put him in the same weight class as similar men, probably, yeah. If he trained, probably.
I think Fallon Fox is the perfect example that you can be relatively untrained as a man and enjoy all the perks that men have and still beat the shit out of well-trained women.
What do you think the most important perk that a man has over a woman in a combat sport?
I'd say strength, probably.
Yeah, probably. Where do you think most of that strength comes from?
Testosterone?
Yep. Testosterone increases the protein synthesis in your muscles, so you're able to put on muscle much, much faster than a woman. And if you undergo hormone replacement therapy, we have testosterone blockers and estrogen enhancement, synthetic forms of estrogen pumped into you. So your protein synthesis goes down, and there's a universal, a loss of muscle mass in just about everybody who undergoes HRT, even people who continue training, which is pretty crazy. Like, usually it doesn't take much to hold on to muscle mass. Your body will hold on to it if you give a reason to. But what we found and this is just anecdotally, again, I would love to have more studies on this, and if anybody out there has studies, please send them to me. I have hopefully you'll put up my Twitter handle or something. I want to see studies on this. Even with training, your muscle mass goes down a lot. And with it, since cross-sectional area is the largest predictor of strength, that goes strength.
You contradicted yourself.
Okay, sure. How?
You said the body will hold on to muscle mass if it has a reason to.
I said, so
even if you start taking testosterone and you're still training, your body is going to hold on to that amount of muscle mass. You might drop a little weight, but it's still going to hold on to muscle mass.
Maybe I misspoke there, but I'm pretty sure I said that even though that is typically the case, when we see people undergo hormone replacement therapy, even if they train, they still lose muscle mass. So maybe I wasn't clear with that, but I pretty clearly, I hope I said that even though that's typically the case, that we hold on to muscle mass with training, even a modest amount of training, with hormone replacement therapy, the environment is so different from what it used to be, you're going to lose muscle cross-sectional area.
So you said you were a former powerlifter, right?
Uh-huh.
How much was your row?
My row? What do you mean?
How much could you row?
Like, specifically, there's a ton of different types of rows.
Just straight pullback.
Straight pull. Okay, let's go like a seated row with a cable.
Yeah, seated row.
Roughly, 190 for 10 was a working set. Roughly.
Okay. All right, I wasn't expecting that answer. I was comparing it to my own. So you did 190 for 10, right? Now, let's say because I saw your picture. You
the fat one.
You still look kind of big. And you still look pretty strong. What could you row now if you wanted to?
Finals were fucking awful. This whole semester's been awful. So right now, probably, 150 for 10-ish.
So you didn't lose that much in however long you haven't trained.
It feels like it.
And that's just not training. You lost 40 pounds on your per 10 set.
Why don't you ask me what my bench press is now?
Okay, well, what is?
So my last powerlifting meet, my bench was 270. So just 5 pounds short of that, the 2.5 plates, which was not frustrating at all. It's down. It's down to the point where I really don't want to say what it is. I'll tell you, it's under 225 now. That's all. That's all I'm gonna say.
So we'll say, and I'm gonna say this. You don't have to. I'll say you're at 210. That's your bench max.
Don't say that too loud.
We'll say that's your bench max. It's 210.
Mm-hmm.
You've lost 60 pounds on your bench.
Yep.
That's not an insane amount.
That's enormous, man. That's 30. That's 30%. And so, I mean, that's a lot to me. 30%. That's a lot. Now, granted, not all of that's muscle mass. Some of that is just neurological connections, and my ability to recruit motor units. Some of that has gone down too, but still, that's quite a bit.
So again, I wouldn't say you're a professional bencher, right? You wouldn't say that either?
It's by far my worst now.
Becca Swanson, a professional female weightlifter, her bench record is 250.
Yeah, Becca Swanson, let's see. Becca Swanson, what is her weight class, too?
Fuck, I just closed it. God damn it.
Let's see. Ooh, 250. Let's see.
Yeah, she's a bigger gal.
Well, she also, if it's the same Becca Swanson, it looks like she's benching 501 here.
Oh no, I must have read the wrong thing.
Yeah, her weight is 250.
Yeah, that must have been what I read.
And her bench is, so she's benching double body weight. I don't know if this is raw. I don't know if this is raw or not. Listen, we can go down this hole if you want, or we can bring it back, whichever.
We don't have to go down that hole. I just thought that was interesting that like my best bench was 405. So I'm almost at the level of Becca Swanson, and I am incredibly untrained.
405 is not incredibly untrained. Like that's crazy high.
You should see me now. You rethink that.
405 is, especially done under powerlifting rules.
I almost fucking threw up.
That's the sign of a good 1 rep max. Then I think it's hard to say this. Yeah, it's hard to say if it's raw or not. But like I said, it's not important. But 500 pounds is a lot of weight for someone who weighs 250. A double body weight bench press is a lot.
My chat has a question for you.
Sure.
Shoot me up. Female porn?
She-ra porn?
Shemale porn?
Shemale porn? No.
See, he didn't stumble. Midnight in Exile for 5 says, let's be real, this dude is clinging to any rationalization he can to avoid admitting he waxed off to dudes. Oh, that's why you asked. Okay.
Oh, like, do I whack off to dudes? Yeah, like all the time. Like, what do you do? Yeah, I'm married to a man.
Oh, you're gay married?
Yeah. So, yeah, totally whack it to dudes.
You off the stream. Liberal Sanity Project for 5 says, if a trans lesbian marries a bisexual, is the relationship a BLT? P.S. Everyone go sub to SJW debates.
Thanks, LSP.
Jared Hart Norris for 2 says, don't lie, you are a Greek god. At one point in time, I might be, but...
I'm going to assume he was talking to me, because I need this. I need this.
You are a Greek god.
Thank you.
So anyway, back to the substance. I will admit I'm not as read up on this as I would like to be, but I know enough to know that men shouldn't compete with women. So my solution would be, why not have a trans league?
Because it would probably just be so small that no one would compete in it. And why would we need a trans league? So for example, did you know that the IOC, so the International Olympics Committee, I think is what it stands for, have allowed trans athletes to compete since 2004. So a long time. So we've had, at the highest level of competition possible with a lot riding on it, we've had 15 years worth of chances for trans women to just absolutely dominate, and they haven't. And the NCAA, I think, either in 2011 or 2014 started allowing trans athletes to compete. Same deal. We haven't seen trans women just absolutely dominate these sports.
Okay, it's hard for me to tell when you're done talking.
Oh, shut me up. Like I'll like just interrupt me. That's fine.
Okay. So just because they're not competing at the Olympic level doesn't mean they're not taking titles from average women who deserve them. I think you can agree with that, right?
I mean, I can agree with the notion that just because they're not dominating in at the highest level possible, that they're not doing well in smaller competitions. But then you run into this really weird situation where the only way trans women would be accepted is if they never won. And now you wouldn't know it from my powerlifting career, but actually you're supposed to try to win things. You're supposed to try to win competitions, right? So they only get the respect if they lose. That seems kind of weird.
No, they can get respect for winning. They should just be competing against men. Like, if you can't win by competing against men,
no one's.
Go
ahead. No one's transitioning to compete in their sport. At least it's not happening at a broad scale. I've seen no evidence of that ever being a thing. That's an enormous thing to undertake. That impacts every part of your life, way beyond just that sport, especially if it's a local sport or a sport like powerlifting where there's nothing to be gained from it really. Like you're not going to make big bucks as a powerlifter. So I don't see this is not a thing that happens, at least not on a broad scale. And if your chat wants to bring up anecdotes, awesome. Bring up about 900 so we can get a representative sample.
Well, I'd like to. Oh shit! Never mind. I was going to bring up something from your chat, but they corrected themselves. Where are the trans men in sports?
Well, one of them is in. Competing against men. But we just it doesn't get those attention grabbing headlines because if a trans man is competing and doing well, who cares? Like it doesn't get those headlines.
Well, I'll put this out to my chat and yours. If you can find me a trans man, a woman who transitioned into a man, who's beating the competition, I would genuinely like to see that.
Let's see.
Fox donates $5 to say, why not abolish the sex and gender categories in sports altogether? Everyone can compete in the same league. All these problems would get rid of themselves. If women are actually as good as men, there should be no problem.
Chris Mossier, let's see. It's one that comes to mind. Chris Mossier. Let's see, has he won anything? Athletic achievements.
Trans men besides Aaron Rodgers.
Let's see. Mossier made Team USA for the first time. So so we have Chris Mossier, a trans man who made Team USA. And I think
what sport?
I think the marathon.
So it's a trans man runner?
Yep. Sprint duathlon. I have no idea what that is.
I have no fucking clue what that is.
Let's see. Yeah, he's won 2 races in 2014. Won his age group in the iron distance triathlon. Oh, fuck triathlons. Duathlons.
Yeah. Triathlon, that requires a special kind of fucking sadist.
Yeah, you actually have to hate yourself. But yeah, so there's Chris Mossier. There's one. I mean, I just said that anecdotes don't really prove much, but there's one. So it's happening, and we didn't see that, and we might not have heard of Chris Mossier or this guy because.
No one knows shit about biathlons.
Well, no one knows shit about powerlifting either. So, or at least the general public.
That might just be a me thing, but
I don't know anything. Like, I got about 10 seconds of good effort in me, and then I'm done for the day.
Fair enough.
You can apply that to everything, by the way.
Transgender wrestler Mac Big wins Texas girls title again.
Mm-hmm.
This is the exact opposite of what I asked for, LSD. I'm looking for trans men, not trans women.
Well, we see that pop up a lot, so that, that was a trans boy? They're 17, they're boys, come on. Who was forced to compete with women or forced to compete with girls and obviously destroyed them because, there are sex differences. And there are reasons where we probably should have sex separation in sports. I wouldn't advocate for the abolishment of that. But in this case, like the testosterone that he was taking gave him a huge advantage. And he wanted to compete with boys, but they didn't let him because reasons.
That's interesting. I wonder why they wouldn't let him compete against boys if he's a guy. I wonder if they were baiting for this headline because it's a fucking podunk school in Dallas.
Well, it's Texas wrestling, so keep that in mind.
Is that supposed to mean something? I don't know too much about
I kind of
college wrestling.
I might be. I think this was still high school. I might be just assuming that wrestling's big in Texas. LSP would know better.
Yeah. Okay. LSP. Is he from Texas?
Okay. Something to do with Texas.
Because he's a girl, not nebulous, made-up reasons. Well, I still think. Okay, here I'll meet you halfway on this. All right.
Sure.
Because he's a girl. The trans powerlifter has to compete in the men's league, and if he places at all, then he can go compete in the women's league. But if he's just doing this because he wants that trophy,
he's not.
And I know you think that's unusual, but you know what these people do to their bodies.
Yeah, and it's not that
to not even win. They just do things to their bodies to get stronger. I mean, I personally know a power lifter who has just fucked his body up taking steroids.
Yo, that's actually a really interesting point. So can you cheat in an organization, in a federation that doesn't drug test? Is it even possible to cheat in that?
I think it's possible to do it dishonestly.
Well, there's no honesty to it. I mean, you can eat steroids for breakfast. They're not going to test it. So
but you're still taking steroids.
Yeah, but if
that's like saying if you steal and no one catches you, is it still stealing?
Yes, but if it's an untested federation, that's basically an untested bodybuilding and powerlifting. That's not, oh, well, we're just going to go on the honor system. No, that's like tacit approval that, yeah, you're going to take steroids. That's why the untested federations are so much bigger. That's why everybody loves the IFBB and no one gives a fuck about the natural tested divisions. The IFBB, those big powerlifters, the ones that, get a ton of, well, I guess they used to get on magazine covers. I don't know if we still have those anymore. But all of them are on every steroid. And it's not cheating to be on steroids if everyone else is on them. You can argue maybe they should test because, yeah, a lot of them are dropping dead at 40. But the fact is that taking steroids isn't cheating.
So taking hormones isn't cheating.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting thing to be said that if your federation doesn't test and that women can take steroids and are not quote-unquote cheating because they're not testing for it, I think that's an interesting conversation to be had. I'm not saying that's what happened here. I'm not familiar with those organizations, that federation's rules, but it's something interesting.
But if you're trans, you need to take hormones.
Yeah. Well, some do, some don't. There's everybody's a little bit different. Some people are fine.
I don't want to get into the transgender debate right now because that's.
I wasn't really transgender. I was just saying like some people transition just socially and don't take hormones and they're fine with it.
Okay, transition socially. What does that mean?
It just means like you wear the clothes that you want to. You identify as the gender that you want to. And you don't necessarily take hormones or do surgery or anything like that. So.
I thought that was just called cross-dressing.
Well, no, because it has to do with identity and not with performance. So.
Okay, I guess I would be a bad libertarian if I said they shouldn't do that.
Libertarian.
Do you think transgenders is a real thing?
When you say transgenders, are you people? People just do it to try it out.
Just say that they're trans.
I'm sure there are some out there who exist. Yeah, just like there are people who were gay trenders and just did it to feel special for a little bit. I'm sure they exist. But one, if it happens, I don't see any problem with it happening. And two, I don't think it's a huge problem that should impact the validity of the research done on transitioning.
All right, so I kind of want to move on because we keep just going off into random spacious things. What about okay, so I saw this study. I'm going to see if I can find it real quick. This
it's gone.
Transition study that said if kids show signs of wanting to transition at a young age, and they don't.
Mm-hmm.
They turn gay into just normal gay people. Do you think kids should transition, or do you think they should wait till they're older to do so?
What do you mean transition for kids? So do you
Like
mean
starting puberty blockers, hormone therapy, shit like that?
so you don't really start puberty blockers until you start going through puberty. So if we're talking about young kids, 3, 4, 5 years old, the research suggests that we start developing a sense of gender by the time we're around 2 or 3 years old, and that if someone is starting to do atypical gender behavior, which means they start to do things that are more closely associated with the gender they were not assigned at birth, I don't see any reason to keep them from doing that. And if they're consistent in it and they tell you, hey, I would like to go with she pronouns or he pronouns, or I want to be called a girl, I don't see anything wrong with, one, affirming their decision to do that as long as it's not hurting them. And two, a lot of the research that I'm familiar with transgender kids saying that affirming their identity drastically reduces their risk of suicide and mental health problems until it is in line and comparable with cisgender peers. And that was a really long, wordy answer. Again, just shut me up if I talk too long.
I want to just pick out one thing you said in that answer, and
Sure.
I think you might know what it be.
Actually, it was too long.
Assigned at birth.
Uh-huh.
What does that mean to you?
It means that when you are born, the doctor writes down, okay, you got a wiener, or you got that virgina, and they're going to say, well, if you got the wiener, you're a male, and if you got that virgina, you're a female.
Now, let me take a second to absorb that answer, because
Sure.
we've talked a lot about studies in this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, wouldn't you say that the gender is not assigned, it's just noticed by the doctor?
Well, the problem is that we assign, or rather we prescribe a certain set of non-physical attributes to what they write down. So, for example, if you were assigned male at birth, but you start to want to play with only princess dolls and dress up in traditionally women's clothing and speak with a female affect, well now, since they assigned you male at birth, now you are doing something incorrect. You're doing something that is abhorrent, or at least wrong, for your gender. That's where that problem happens. So it's not that they write down whether you got a wiener or a virgina. It's with that wiener and virgina, there are certain activities that you are expected to participate in. There are certain things that you are expected to do from that are not related to your physical structure.
Even in primate young,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you would call a chimp child. Even in primate young, they show a aversion to gendered toys. Like little chimp boys will play with
There's a
boy things, and girls will play with girl things because whatever reason.
Well, yeah, there's been some research on, there's sex differences, even at as young as like 1 or 2, and what toys you'll go for. That's fine, but should that be the normative prescription? You say that because it tends to happen, that's what we should be doing?
My openly biracial, as the article says, co-host is in the chat. It says a chimp child. Me? That's funny.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I just don't understand that answer. Like, there's a bunch of extra sexual outside the actual gender things that kids are expected to do.
Okay, so
I don't. You said you're gay, so I don't know if you have kids or not.
I will,
but
one day.
I know when my boys were little, I expected them to shit their pants and crawl around at the age of 2 or walk around at the age of 2. I didn't expect much else from that.
Well, yeah. But they still get a sense of there are boys and girls, and I'm one of them. Or maybe not. So it doesn't. Now, when I say they get a sense of gender by the time they're 2 or 3, that doesn't mean they have like this fully encapsulated idea. It just means they're starting to get the beginnings of it. So when a 3-year-old when they start to play, they can have gendered expression in their play, or at least, well, since you've made it so that there are gendered toys. If they start playing with certain toys over others, you could make the case that is a gendered toy. So they start to have some kind of notion of that. even beyond that. Again, this is not my area of expertise. It's just what I'm familiar with in literature. For example,
Okay, so what would you consider gender toys? Because I know that boys, as my collection behind me will iterate, boys can play with dolls, action figures, right?
ooh, that's actually a really cool thing that you just
Girls
did.
can play with dolls and action figures.
Why
Boys
is it?
can play with dream houses,
Mhm.
and girls can play with trucks. It doesn't mean that's a gender expression
No, that's a great thing that you just said, but why did you say dolls and action figures?
because they're basically the same thing.
I mean, yeah, but so why not just have one name for both?
Because I was trying to include both,
I
so
don't,
people know what I was talking about.
But that is a really cool thing that definitely happened when I was little. So I grew up in a very conservative area of Kentucky, and I didn't want. So when I played with my Power Rangers, those were action figures. Those were action
Right.
figures. They weren't dolls. Dolls are what girls play with. And if I do something that a girl does, I'll get yelled at and I'll get made fun of. So I don't want to do the thing that the girls do. I want to do the things the boys do, so I don't get yelled at.
So you played with dolls but called them action figures?
No, I played with Power Rangers, but when someone would call them a doll, I'd get really upset because dolls are what girls play with, and I'm not supposed to do things girls do.
But we're not in the conservative part of Kentucky. We're just talking as normal people.
Yeah, I'm just
Can't-
go ahead.
Can't can't you just play with whatever you want without it being a gendered thing?
Yeah,
Like I know my sister had a what the fuck was it? Some sort of like big Barbie house thing.
hmm
And I would use that thing for my little green army men. And I would fuck that tiny house up with my army men.
of course.
And I would never go, I'm playing in the dollhouse. I'm like, it's the fucking, I'm playing with that thing right there. It never occurred to me that that was a girl's toy.
Well, that's awesome for you. I had a very, very
I had a
prevalent
conservative
understanding.
family too. They just knew that it would be cheaper to let me play with that than buy me an army base.
Yeah, maybe it would have been different if I had sisters growing up. And again, these are just anecdotes. I probably made it seem I was probably way too reductive. So just toy selection is not indicative of gender. I'm saying there's a multitude of factors. The most important.
What other things would you show at such a young age that would be indicative of gender besides the toys you play with?
I'd have to go back and consult the literature. So how you act, who you identify with, whose mannerisms you start to emulate more. So, for example, if your mother is typically feminine and your father is typically masculine, of course, these are really broad strokes, and you start to act more like your mother because you identify with her more, that could be a thing. I'm not a clinician. I'm not going to give you an affirmative answer on that just because it's way outside of my breadth of knowledge. But I do trust the researchers to say that we have a sense of gender by the time we're 3. Not a complete one by any stretch of the imagination, but just the beginnings of one. And that if someone is consistent in their gender identity throughout their childhood, that's evidence that they're probably going to stay like that when they're adults.
Is that your dryer going off in the background?
Yeah.
Okay, that was an interesting answer, and I liked it, but I wish you could tell me more about your thoughts on it, and not just consulting the literature. I want to hear what your thoughts are on the issue.
Well, they're really complicated. So I do try to base my opinions based on the literature because I care very much about being correct. But no, I get where you're coming from. So what are my thoughts on? Can you ask the question again because I'm very stupid?
Okay, I forgot what the question was too.
I don't feel as bad.
Letting children just pick their own toys and that being some sort of gender expression. What other gender expression could there be at such a young age besides the toys you play with?
So at a young age, I actually am 100% on board with what you said. Yeah, let kids play with what they want to and don't read too much into it. I'm 100% on board with what you do there. I'm saying that could, in some cases, be one factor in determining gender expression. And I'm not sure like that otherwise. Like I said, I'm not familiar enough with the research. I'm just saying that it is a thing that exists. So my opinion on it is that it's a thing that it exists, and I am not comfortable making super broad or super affirmative statements because I don't want to say something that goes against the facts. Because I have complicated thoughts about it too. Like
I'm just talking from my balls here, and I kind of hoped you would
best place to talk
return it
from.
with your personal opinion. This doesn't have to be fact.
You didn't tell me I
trying to
was
get your
supposed to
opinion.
talk from my balls. Okay, I can do that. So I don't really like that anything is gendered. I like good things and bad things. There are some typically historically masculine traits that I think are just good and everyone should have, and there are some historically feminine traits that are just good and I think everyone should have. And those are how I'm going to raise my kids and how I would love society to move. That it's good to be principled and stand up for what you believe in. That it's good to be empathetic and care about other people. That both of these are equally good, and it doesn't matter why they're good, or they're not shaded in a certain light by virtue of being quote unquote masculine or feminine.
Yeah, those are virtues that any person can be. They can have either of those. Those aren't necessarily gendered virtues.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to say, like, okay, I'll pull an example out of my head. Oh, actually, you know what? This is more interesting than whatever I was about to say. I think that gendered toys are kind of making a going away, because now kids seem to be more into technology, iPads, Nintendo Switches, that kind of shit.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of where like gendered toys is disappearing, which isn't a bad thing. I don't like the idea of kids being glued to a tablet all day, but
Yeah, bad for other reasons.
I know my kids love Pokemon cards. They love Pokemon cards. That's not a gendered thing.
No, of course not. Not everything has to be gendered. And like I said, I'm fully on board. I'm with you on this.
All right. Well, so what do you think about kids transitioning?
Kids transitioning. So I think it's all fine. I think it's fine. So for a child, until they get on puberty, all that means is that they wear the clothes that they want to, and you refer to them by the pronouns that they want you to refer to them as. You treat them like.
But you start hormones at age, I want to say 6 to 8. You start hormones then.
Nope.
Then puberty blockers. Then you continue with the hormones.
No, that's just factually incorrect. No, you don't start hormones at 6 or 8. You don't. So
when do you start hormones?
So that I think that comes from somebody said that children as young as 8 are being put on puberty blockers. No, not really. That came from one story where someone who was 8 years old and they were starting the process of considering puberty blockers. So they were just monitoring them and saying that, okay, we're probably going to put you on puberty blockers, and you're now 8 years old, and this is where we're going to start monitoring you to make sure that's the best course of action. So no, it's, as far as I'm aware of, no. It's social transitioning. You're treated how you want to be treated. We refer to you how you want to be referred, and that's it. And then if that is consistent, and if it sticks for up until you start puberty, well, then we can put you on puberty blockers to, one, make sure that you're feeling good and your body doesn't start undergoing changes that are upsetting to you and that could trigger gender dysphoria. And two, it just gives you a little bit of extra time. So it's fully reversible. Like whatever hormones are in your body, after you get off the blockers, those are going to run their course anyway. You're going to go through puberty again, or you're going to go through puberty like you normally would have. Thanks, Dryer.
Okay, so I pulled this. The Guide to Hormone Therapy for Trans People.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And
I had this up at some point too.
Starting hormone therapy. Let me pull an age out of this one, because I know you're supposed to start before puberty, so you can put them on puberty blockers, and puberty can happen at quite the young age. Of course, it's different from child to child. But puberty happens between 8 to 12, right?
Generally, yeah. 8 seems really early to me. Like, I thought it was more, 10 to 14.
14's late, dude.
Don't make fun of me.
14 is a little late.
12, okay. It's between the ages, in girls between 10 and 14, and in boys between 12 and 16, just based on the very first thing I Googled.
Okay, here we go. Toddler to become Britain's youngest transgender after mom found her trying to cut off her quote-unquote bits.
Ugh. Thanks.
Yeah. I think this is a little boy. I want to say...
Well,
I want to say this is a little boy. And then you have the school teacher who was caught trying to push a bunch of transgender stuff on this little kid. I think he was 8. whatever, however old you are in second grade, 8, 9 years old.
Okay.
They were caught trying to do that. So at a young age, they're grooming these children to get ready to transition as soon as they start puberty,
So
whenever that.
you're making gigantic leaps from two anecdotes to broad statements about what they are doing.
Well, that is when you would start. Here we go. Child 4 is the world's youngest ever sex change patient.
Again,
Australian officials have confirmed that a 4-year-old child is going through a sex change procedure. So this stuff does happen, right? And I'm not saying this is the common thing.
I would say, yeah, world's youngest. It was so outlandish that it got an entire story about it. I really don't like basing my opinions on broad topics based on like sensationalist news headlines.
I'm not saying 4 is the average. We'll go with what you said.
10 to 14 in girls and 12 to 16 in boys, just based on the first thing that I Googled. So 9 to 14-ish.
All right, I Googled average puberty age, and it says 12.
Yeah, probably the same thing I pulled up too.
Yeah, probably. So we'll say 12 is the average age that kids start to transition.
Yep.
So you have to put them on puberty blockers before they start puberty. So we'll say, just in this case, we'll say you start puberty blockers at 11, just to be safe.
Okay,
right?
sure. Sure, we'll say. I'm not sure that happens, but we'll say that.
Well, again,
we'll say that, yeah.
So, do you think that's okay to do at such a young age?
Yep. Couple of reasons. One, if they put them on puberty blockers, based on they probably have been trans a while. This isn't a process where you can just go into a doctor and say, "Hey, my kid feels like they're a girl, even though they were assigned a boy at birth. So can we just get a prescription for puberty blockers?" No, it just doesn't happen like that. There is a very long, drawn-out process to make sure, because believe it or not, medical professionals actually do want to do what's best for their patients, and they're not going to do something that is potentially has risk associated with it on a whim. So usually, when you start puberty blockers, it's because you have been under surveillance from a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a general practitioner, an endocrinologist. You've been under surveillance for a long time. And they're saying, yeah, this is the best option for this kid. And all this is going to do is it does what it says. We're just going to block receptors for whatever hormone that is going to make you go through puberty to give you more time so you can, like, is this really who you are, or are we going to... Like, they're giving you more time to decide and affirm, and they're also staving off symptoms of gender dysphoria, which could have come about from going through the puberty that you don't want to go through. Again, shut me up if I ramble.
Actually, I was looking at my phone because I sent a message in that group chat. Can you repeat that answer, please?
No. There's so many. It's okay. I'm tempted to just like play it back now. Fuck. Where was I? So typically what happens is this isn't a spur-of-the-moment thing. You don't just walk into a doctor's office and say, hey, can I get a prescription for puberty blockers? No, what typically happens is that you have a team of psychologists, psychiatrists, and endocrinologists, a general practitioner who've been monitoring you for a long time, and if you have a consistent gender identity that is different from the one you were assigned at birth, they're going to say, okay, puberty blockers probably are going to be the best thing for you to go through. And all that's going to do is it's going to delay puberty. They do exactly what they say they do, so you can get a better grasp of what your gender identity is. And if it ends up changing, fine. They're fully reversible, and you can go through puberty normal when you get off of them. Or it can, stave off feelings of gender dysphoria that could result from going through the puberty that's not the same as what you identify as. Did you hear that one?
Yeah. Don't you think that it's just as possible that experiencing the hormones that you would experience during puberty could knock you out of that dysphoria phase?
I'm not sure. It might. It might not. It might make it worse.
Yeah, that's true. LSP, if you did come up with questions that you wanted to ask us, now would be the time to pop on and ask us a couple questions. Look, I'm just going to be honest here. I really don't give a shit what people do with their body. It's children that bugs me. Like, when I see a parent pushing their kid through the transition thing, like, why can't a young 12-year-old boy dress up like a girl if he wants to be a girl.
They can,
And that just be enough for now.
because whatever.
Until they get older and decide that that's not what they want to do.
What if the medical research says it's not enough, and that he's going to have better outcomes psychologically and have way lower instances of gender dysphoria if he also undergoes puberty blockers? What if there's a better option available to them, but because people thought it was weird, they didn't have access to it?
Is that a thing though? Like, do they know that doing that at such a young age really has that kind of outcome?
Yep, all the research I've
Like,
seen.
we don't let kids vote.
Nope.
We don't let kids join the military.
Nope.
We don't let kids drink alcohol, smoke cigarettes. Why should we let kids transition if it's going to hurt their body in the long run? Because things like that happen naturally as when they're supposed to. Like, if you are supposed to go through puberty at the age of 12, that's when you're supposed to do it. But if you take puberty blockers and don't end up going through puberty at the age of till like you're 22, that could be worse for your body in the long run if you decide that you don't want to transition.
What if you were supposed to die of hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia? What if that's what naturally you were supposed to do?
Well, we're talking about not that. We're talking about something completely different.
I mean, it's not that different. So hyperglycemia, so that results if you are a type 1 diabetic, that's a hormone imbalance that causes you to go hyperglycemic to the point where it could be potentially fatal. And so even children as young as, 2, 3, 4 years old, we're giving them hormones. We're giving them hormones at 2, 3, 4 years old for this condition. Insulin.
Yeah, insulin isn't testosterone or estrogen.
It's a hormone.
That's like saying I take vitamin C tablets. You know, it's not the same.
Yeah, so why isn't it the same? It's a hormone that alleviates a disorder.
I don't understand why you're trying to compare diabetic to trans.
I'm saying that there's a
That's
hormone.
like asking a fucking person with a heart attack issue, hey, why do you take aspirin every day? Your blood's supposed to be thick. It's just a dumb thing.
Well, it is a dumb thing. That's why I don't like it when people bring up natural as an argument. Natural doesn't mean good or bad, and there's I have a ton of issues with what actually natural means. So when you say, well, this is supposed to happen, what do you mean supposed to happen? Based on what?
Well, that's like saying that growth plates are pointless because, it just happens. So why does it matter? If you're supposed to be a certain height based off your genetics and your environment, then you're supposed to be a certain height. You don't take out growth plate hormones because someone identifies as a midget. Growth plate hormones. You don't take out growth plates.
Well, what if that your height was going to cause you enormous distress to the point where you had suicide rates of people who were 8 feet and above, suicide rates of 40, 50, 60%? What if there was some way we could stop that from happening and make sure that their height was more in line with what they felt comfortable with? And in doing so, we drastically reduce their suicide rate and their mental well-being. Would that be a good thing or a bad thing?
Again, you're kind of drawing a false equivalency here. Because we're talking about something that's optional. Like, you don't have to transition.
No.
But you can if you want to. It's perfectly acceptable if you do transition.
Yeah, of course.
But you're talking about people dying because they're too tall. Like, that doesn't make sense.
I'm saying in the terms of the hypothetical we set. If it happens in the same way that, being this height... increase suicide rates, and we could do something to stop it, and it was optional, just like transitioning is, wouldn't it be great if that was an option for them? And there wasn't, a huge section of society who was saying that, no, this is just how you're supposed to be, deal with it?
Is that a real argument?
It's a hypothetical one. I'm trying to get down to the point.
The this is how you're supposed to be, deal with it. Is that a real argument? Because I have a hard time believing that grown adults care so much about what other adults do.
Of course we do. Like, yeah, I care very much about what other grown adults do. Like, I care. As
long as it's not affecting you, why do you care what other grown people do?
Because generally I care about the happiness of the people around me, and I want them to do things that make them happy and results in the highest sense of general well-being in society. So I care very much about, what they do. I care about the opioid epidemic, even though it doesn't affect me personally, because I generally don't want people to die. I care about a lot of things that don't directly affect me, but I want what's best for society, so I care about what other people do.
Okay. That's a good answer in and of itself. The opioid epidemic is a thing that's killing hundreds of people a week, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But that if the person down the street from you has been a heroin addict their whole life, are you going to walk up to them and go, "You got to stop doing that," or are you just going to go, "You made your choices"?
Probably the second one. No, sorry, the one where I advocate. Not well, actually, neither. I would advocate for a system in place that's going to help them far better than me personally ever could. So I know me going up to the heroin addict and saying, "Hey, stop doing this." That's not going to help anything. But me advocating for programs like needle exchange programs or drug rehab funding and things like that, that actually might actually help them. And that's kind of the parallel that I
The
would like to
needle
draw.
exchange program does not help people to stop doing drugs, and that's the only thing that'll stop the opioid epidemic is people stop doing drugs.
No, but it reduces risk.
Closing the borders or making people quit are the only things that's going to stop the flow of fentanyl into the country. Debatable,
different topic.
but you get it.
Different, yeah.
That's the stuff that's going to. All right, LSP in the chat has a question for me. Do you have a favorable view of the trans military ban? If so, why? If so, why? I'd say not on the front lines because it's hard to get them their hormones that they need. But other than that, no, I don't care. I don't think anyone who needs to take pills daily should be on the front lines. So if that makes you feel any better. Other than that, no, I don't care. I think that's the libertarian in me. Like, because the big thing right now is the abortion argument, right? That's the thing people are talking about. It's a war on women. It's this, it's that. But I don't care what you do with your body. You get what I'm saying?
Are you talking to me or answering LSP?
I'm talking to you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I get what you're saying. I care what you do to your body if it is going to negatively impact society, though.
Is a dope addict impacting society in the negative or the positive, just existing?
Just existing? Well, we'd have to look at the research on it.
Just existing and doing dope?
So if someone who is extremely addicted to opioids, if these people tended to, because they're in altered mental states or just because they're desperate and they've lost a lot of options, if they're a net harm on society and they're more likely to go out and commit crime, or they're more likely to be a danger to society, yeah, that does affect me. I would like you to not do that. And I would like to not issue punitive measures at you, but more rehabilitative measures to help you so that it helps society as a whole.
Well, there are rehabilitative measures for these people. They just choose not to take them for whatever reason. They just choose not to.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can't force them to do that unless you throw them in jail and make them. So that's a really complicated issue outside of this, but it just the reason we brought it up that I care very much about what other people do with their bodies because I want the most people to be the happiest we can be.
I guess that's where you and I will differ because I really don't give a shit what another grown adult does. I don't care if a woman enters a men's competition and loses terribly, or if a man enters a women's competition and blows them out of the water. I'll laugh at it, but I don't give a shit. Like, I'm not going to lobby for stuff to make that not happen. Anything short of a transgender league.
Do you think that maybe the content you create, though, could lead to that reasonably?
The content I create could lead to a transgender league?
Could lead to people having more negative perceptions on transgender people that affect their voting patterns.
Okay, can you reword that a different way or repeat it? Because I think you lost me when you got to voting patterns.
So do you think that the content you create could reasonably lead to people who watch your content having a negative view of trans people and then taking that negative view and enacting some sort of change upon it? Whether it's through voting or advocacy or something of that nature. I'm not saying that you would be personally responsible for it. I'm just saying that do you think that's a reasonable outcome based on the content you create?
No, because I don't really advocate for anything. I just make fun of stupid shit I see on the internet.
Well, yeah, but people listen to it, and I think to a certain degree you would like to change people's minds, right?
I want them to hear what I have to say. If they change their mind, that's on them. I don't go out there every day in the mindset that I'm going to make people feel differently. I go out with the mindset like I want to make you laugh and I want to make you think about this issue.
Well, that kind of, if you are laughing and thinking about an issue, you kind of do want them to reevaluate their positions then. Like I very much want people to change their minds. I very much want to change people's minds with my content. It's the goal I actually set out to do. I wanted to create content with a ton of sources that is well reasoned and engaging and entertaining and funny when it needs to be, in order to make people pay attention and hopefully change their minds if they didn't already agree with me. That's the goal I set out from the get go.
That's a very noble goal, and I hope you achieve it. Honestly, but I think that Super Chat from Wow Pow sums it up perfectly. I don't dislike trans people. I dislike stupid ideas. And the idea that you can transition a kid from the age of 12 is very, very dangerous in my opinion. It's irresponsible.
I love that he has these opinions, but all the research says otherwise. So, if you hate stupid ideas, you should really look at what the research says to make sure you don't have one. I'm not trying to be overly combative. I'm sorry. I could be more overly combative. Is it a more entertaining stream if I am?
Maybe. I think blood sports was a thing for a little bit.
Right, let's see what when my microphone peaks out. Ah!
Yeah, that didn't sound great.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'll just keep it below that, and we'll keep the screams below that.
It's not just about research. It's about countering the ideas that they have. Like, you can research something till the cows come home, but if
then you got to stop because you got to deal with the cows.
Yeah, but if you're basing it all on social science stuff, you're on a shaky ground to start out with, you know?
Well, oddly enough, I did a video on social sciences too, and yeah, they're not as objective as more hard sciences, more physical sciences, but they do have their own research methods. They do have peer review. They are replicatable in most instances.
Peer review is kind of fucking bogus now, anyway.
Well, it's the best we got. If you don't like peer review and you are like skeptical of a journal, that's actually good. There are a lot of shitty journals out there. Try looking at the journal's impact factor. It's the best we got right now, unfortunately, but impact factor is going to tell you how many times articles from a certain journal have been cited in other journals. And aside from peer review, a step above that, it's the best we got right now, unfortunately.
So I guess one of my favorite research things that have come out recently is the quote-unquote alternative influencer network. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Have you heard of that?
Yep.
Do you think that's a well-thought-out research paper, or do you think that's someone who just wrote some shit down that thought it looked good?
I think that was this published in a journal? So alternative
influencer network.
Okay, first. Awesome.
I think it was just published for a news
scholarly articles for. No, let's see. Yeah, if it was just published for a news, like a journal or a magazine or something like that, not a journal, but if it's just published for a magazine, I'm fine with that. Like, if it's not published in a journal, regardless of whether or not it agrees with me, I'm not going to take it seriously. I think it's interesting to think about, but in terms of like saying it as fact, no, I wouldn't do that.
But just saying that it's a journal kind of gives it some sort of authoritative thing, don't you think?
Saying it is a journal, it is in general.
Or saying it's a study. I'm sorry.
Saying it's a study. Well, is it a study though? It's a report. Rebecca Lewis. Well, it's a report, not a study. So that's the big red flag for me. I've heard of it a little bit, and I've seen a little bit. I don't think it's I don't think this would pass muster in an actual legitimate scientific journal.
But it's being pushed around by a ton tons of news sources.
Well,
Like, I
yeah.
think CNN used that at one point.
Well, yeah. I mean, it doesn't mean it's completely devoid. I think it's interesting to talk about. I just wouldn't refer to it as fact. Like, for example, they'll bring on people who write books about things, and they'll bring on them to talk about topics, and I think that's fine, as long as like this isn't a peer-reviewed piece of work. It hasn't been confirmed. We shouldn't view it as 100% fact, but that doesn't mean it's 100% fiction, and it's interesting to talk about. So even though, go ahead.
Can you type something in my chat real quick?
In your chat?
I'm gonna give you a wrench so you can put your channel link in there.
Oh.
In a minute.
Like in your chat on your YouTube channel?
Yeah.
Shit. Now I gotta go find it.
Okay.
Well, I put your. Hold
on. Yeah. I'm gonna go through the super chats right now. Logic guy. I read that one. Jared Hart Norris for 10 says, so I wake up tomorrow and decide that I'm trans. I lived 30 years as a lie. Now I've decided to enter a women's league. Can I just say I'm a woman and compete against women? I just need this for research.
Nope. Now, in order to, if you have gone through puberty, in order to compete against cis people of your identified gender, I believe most organizations say you have to go 1 to 2 years of hormone replacement therapy and have your hormone levels monitored. So if he decides to do that, I support him 100%. Or I guess her after that, and I will support them 100%. But in terms of competing with people, no, you have to go through the proper channels, and I don't think that's unfair. And I don't think any trans people would say that that's not that's an undue process that they should. I don't think any trans people would disagree with that either.
LSP says, haha, you gave Sinatra money, loser, after he gives me $5. Yeah. Ragnock Alfbert for 20, thank you so much. He needs to understand that this is the start. Like, the court precedent views on the issues will be built from these first anecdotal cases as an excuse, and the main issue will be leapfrogged instead of being properly examined. I think that's a good point.
I think it's a really boring point. I don't really care about slippery slope arguments. Like, it could, it might not. Like, you got to build that bridge for me. Also, this isn't on your main channel, is it? I don't see it.
No, this is on my stream channel. I got a fucking copyright strike.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Here, I'll put the link to the chat in the Hangout chat.
Yes, thank you.
There we go. Ranting Monkey just put something interesting. How much of the psychology literature is wrong? I would assume a lot of it, because a lot of the stuff that they put in psychology gets pushed over.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the system. I mean, that's the system functioning like it should, right? Like, people put out something, their methods are addressed, their results are questioned, their data analysis are reviewed, and people find faults with it and then correct them. Fucking shut up, Dryer!
Yeah. Get your fucking clothes. Oh my god.
He's such a shitty Dryer. But that's the system functioning like it should. You should never rely on one study to completely base your opinions off of. It should be a multitude of studies. That's why I said, so from that transgender runner study earlier, that's why I really preface it. It's just one study. So I wouldn't make any super broad affirmative claims based on just that one study. So that's the system functioning like it should.
I think LSP in the chat has a good point. He says, psychology is a bit different under evaluating truth. Because it's not exactly a hard quantifiable thing.
If you ever want to talk to me about objectivity in science and in general, that's one of my favorite topics to talk about. I love that shit.
But Monkey also has a good point. But the things that they publish are accepted as truth for years before being called out as wrong. And a lot of that stuff does become quote unquote common knowledge.
Yep.
Until it isn't anymore.
Yep, that's how science works. Whatever we have right now, whatever the consensus is right now, that's the closest we're ever going to come to objective scientific truth. That's why
Logic Guy says, can I pass a question on? Just throw it in the chat too. I'll try to catch it if I can. I read Wild Pals. Midnight in Exile says, this guy has hurt my opinion of the LGBT way more than anything Sinut has ever done. He is the reason why I no longer support them.
Cool, buddy.
I think that's a very good point. I don't support the LGBT community because the community has turned into this mess of stuff. But I support LGBT people. I don't support the community and their pride parades and shit like that.
What's wrong with pride parades?
I don't like the idea of half naked men walking around with children. That half naked, full naked men.
Hey, full naked men don't walk around with children. That doesn't have it in pride parades. And if it does,
yes, it does.
Right, no,
look it up.
Look it up. Sure.
Naked men at pride parades.
Cool.
That's a thing that happens.
Cool. That's a thing that happens. That's not common. And if it does happen, they're violating city codes and they're not supposed to be there.
But okay, let me ask you one thing, a little bit off topic. How do you feel about?
Oh, everybody's calling me a liar.
What?
Everybody's calling me a liar. Oh, y'all, give me them anecdotes. I want them anecdotes.
But we're talking about a thing that happened. Just because there's no study behind it doesn't mean it didn't happen.
I know, but these one-off examples, you're trying to make broad statements about the general LGBT community. You're going to give me what? Oh, you can find that it happened one time? Give me 20 times, 50 times. I'm sure it's happened more than once. Yeah. Then what? Okay, let's say that does happen. That's bad, and I don't agree with it. Yeah, we shouldn't have naked people prancing around in the street. I don't like that. That's none of the... So, does that mean that the idea of a pride parade is bad? I'm a dumb SJW, guys. Build me them bridges. Build me them logical steps you can take from, because a naked guy was around a kid at a pride parade, which is bad. That means that the entire pride movement, or the entire idea of pride parades, or the entire LGBT community in general is wrong and should be taken out. Give me that bridge, guys. I want it. Give me that.
I'll tell you why I don't like the LGBT community. It's because they went from doing something that's this is empowering. This is you becoming you to do what I say or else, motherfucker. The gay cartel is a very strong cartel. You know that.
I wish it was stronger, man, because I'm not feeling it. Like, tell me how. Where can I find them?
Are you ever discriminated against in your life because you're gay?
Half my family disowned me for being gay, so yeah.
So... What I thought you didn't like anecdotes. Are you discriminated against?
You asked me just now what my experience was.
No, So half your family disowned you, right?
Yeah.
Well, why do you care if they don't accept you?
I don't give a shit about them. But I'm saying it happened. I'm not going to speak to half my family ever again. And the reason I don't care is because they did that.
And you think the LGBT community is going to become your new family?
No. I think that I generally support LGBT causes, and as much as we can be a community, I like hanging out with people occasionally that share this certain thing with me. That doesn't mean that I'm always hanging out with them, or that's my only identity, or that's the only thing I do. But yeah, I'm a part of the LGBT community. I think I'm a good part of it. I think I think rationally, and I'm good at studies, and I'm good at research, and I think I'm a pretty likable person who just looks fucking hot as hell on camera. So,
they become a movement of shaming anybody who isn't a straight white male, or anyone who is a straight white male. Why do you think they added black and brown to the flag?
Because it's just there's a lot of disproportionately high rates of victimization and violence in people of color communities. And so it was saying that, hey, we see you.
What does that have to do with pride, though? What does that have to do with being gay? Black people having crimes committed against them. What does that have to do with being gay?
Because there's so in the gay community, sometimes in LGBT circles and pride parades, that gay white men lead the charge, and we just want to kind of like, in this spirit of we're trying to get everybody together, we're trying to speak as broadly as we can for everybody, empower everybody. So let's just acknowledge that in some cases we need to elevate the voices of people of color. That's all that is.
Logic Guy throws 5 without a comment. Thanks, dude. I appreciate that. I don't like the fact that it has become a political movement.
It has to be political.
It does?
Yes.
I would disagree with you on that one.
Really?
Why? There's plenty of gay right-wingers who are part of the LGBT quote-unquote community, but aren't part of the community.
So you can't see me, but I'm holding up my wedding ring right now.
Oh, let me fucking pull your thing up. One second.
No, I'm telling you so you don't have to. That was a political decision.
My chat's asking what you look like, and
dude, I'm fucking hot. Don't
I'll
check
be the
though.
judge of that.
No, don't check that. Don't check. Okay.
Now I'm pulling it up.
Nope. Don't do it. Come on. Just accept my
Hold on.
word for it.
No anecdotes on your hotness. Oh, you're not a bad looking dude. Let me pull this up here. Yeah, there he is. Wave to the camera and it'll come through on the delay. Did you set that as your background?
Oh, that's my desktop.
Yep. See, there he is.
I played around with OBS. I got my green screen working.
I think Irate Bear might try to rape you, to be honest.
Wait, I see Irate Bear. Am I the Irate Bear? I can be
No,
irate.
he's the Irate Bear. I think he's going to try to rape you.
Oh, that's fine. But I'm also an Irate Bear, so.
Ranting Monkey says if I was gay, I would date him. He's a good-looking dude.
Oh, well, thank you, Ranting Monkey.
Fox throws $3 to say the hormone therapy is not always reversible, and it can permanently harm the reproductive system. Can a child really decide if they want kids or not on their own in their entire life? I would press X to doubt. I've done a face reveal. I would say that children at that age couldn't decide a lifelong thing like that. Because I thought I never wanted to have kids up until my girl got pregnant, and I was like, oh, nice.
Well, there's a ton of reasons that they go into this. So they evaluate. No one goes into this blind. So as best as they can, they're going to make sure these kids know everything about the process. They're going to make sure the parents know everything about the process. And they're only going to go forward with this if it's their best possible decision that they can make. If it is going to reduce their overall risk of harm, if it is going to impact their mental health the best. We also have to think that, I can't have kids. Well, at least with my husband, no matter how hard we try. So, but
if one of you were a trans man, you could have kids.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, just like you said, it can be complicated there. But, I mean, there's other methods, so we're going to adopt. So there's other methods of having kids. And it's...
Are you going to adopt a little kid of color? Be full virtue?
I'm going to go, so do you ever sing 30 Rock?
No, I don't watch it.
Yeah, the end of that, I'm just going to adopt a version of the two people that cause my life the most stress. I'm going to adopt like an 8 and 9-year-old version of them.
You're going to adopt an 8-year-old?
It's a reference to 30 Rock.
Oh, okay, yeah, I don't get it. Sir Pow throws 2 says, ask him if he would fuck a tranny. I do a show 3 times a week with someone who would fuck a tranny. I'm not gonna.
Hey, now you can call me anything you want. You can say whatever horrible shit about me. Do not insult 30 Rock. That's where I draw the line. That's where my SJW sensors just go out the window. So would I fuck a transgender man, which is what I'm gonna call it? Yeah. I mean, I'm married, so no. But theoretically, yes.
No, but yes. Okay. Damn it. There's more stuff I wanted to get into. Shit.
We can do this again later if you want to.
Yeah, we are almost at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, we're at 2 hours and there's some Game of Thrones to
Chad,
watch.
if you want to throw some stuff in there, if you have some questions, I know Logic Guy wanted to ask something. I must not have caught it, but if you want to put your stuff in there, I have no idea what that is. Foreign for $5 of foreign currency says, this is one hell of a civilized conversation between 2 opposing sides. Lots of respect to both of you. That's how it should be done. Thanks, faggots. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Does he believe kids should get a say in how they're raised and how much weight they should be given the option? That's a good one.
I mean, that's tough. Like, raising kids is really, really tough. I don't think they should have no say. I don't think anybody would argue that they should have no say in how they're raised.
But I don't think a kid should be a fat fucking monster, though. That's unhealthy.
Well, yeah, but... Well, then we get back to what's the healthiest for the kid, and so...
Sinatra, what don't you like about the AIN report? Alternative Influencer Network, I assume you mean? It's just terribly done and tries to link YouTubers that have nothing to do with each other to each other just because they were both on the same show at different times.
I think Destiny's on there quite a bit too. So like he's going to be he was on a stream with you and then like 5 right-wing people, so he's just on there. And if you're not, so stuff like that.
It was just poorly put together. Wow, Pow for 2. Much love, Sanute. You're one of my favorites. Thanks, man. I really appreciate hearing that.
Sinatra.
Yeah, that's what people call me.
Yeah, I need a cooler name.
Libertarian,
That was me.
but would use the government to tell kids what their diet should be. I'm not Michelle Obama. I'm not going to try to dietarily dictate what kids do. I just think that if you can help it, you shouldn't make your kid a fat fuck. Ranting Monkey says, I'd say kids get no say. I might give them the appearance of choice, but they're kids. They're morons. That's true, too.
Yeah, but adults are morons, too.
That's also true.
So
yeah, but kids are
idiots.
exponentially dumber.
Yeah.
Like,
we got morons leading morons. I think a kid should have a say in how they're raised, too.
Well, that kind of.
I mean, that's really vacuous and like a topic for another day. Like, what is a say? What does that mean? How big should it be? All that cool stuff. So, it's
like,
nice.
I ask my kids what they want for dinner, but if it's not what I'm making, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, we can also say like, what do you want to do this weekend, and stuff like that. And yeah, if they say, well, let's go on a pirate ship and fly to the moon, we can try to make that happen, but we can also go within the realm of possibilities. But like. In how they're raised, like if your kid wants to do music, if they want to go join bands, are you gonna not let them because they have no say, or is that gonna factor into your decision to get them an instrument? So stuff like that. And if they say, I hate wearing boys' clothes. I hate it. I hate it every second of it. And I know, so I have boy parts, but I hate wearing boys' clothes. I hate it when people call me a boy. I really want to be a girl. Like I think that you should listen to that, and the research backs me up on that.
Well, I think that's fine. I mean, I don't care if that's what you choose to do, but I think putting a kid on hormones at such a young age it can't be good for their body. I don't know if we have hard-hitting, down-to-earth research on giving an 8-year-old hormones, but it's just it can't be good for the kid long term. Ooh, that's a cold draft. Holy shit.
Cold.
Yeah, it must be getting ready to storm.
Like, oh yeah.
C. Thomas says, "I'll say SJW debates did better at arguing his side than Sinatra. Sorry, Sanute, and always good here. Have a civil discourse. Yeah, he definitely got me on some stuff, but he's still an idiot.
Well, yeah, we knew that going in though.
What?
We knew that going in though.
Yeah,
you get no debate from here. Those are just facts.
Hormones gave Jazz Jennings a permanent baby dick. Okay, I don't know what that means. I don't want to talk about baby dicks just in case closed caption.
I think I know what they're talking about. Jazz Jennings. So she was on puberty blockers, and then I could be completely wrong. This is off the top of my head. She was on puberty blockers, and that made her sex reassignment surgery more difficult. But it still ended up as a success. So
I don't even know who Jazz Jennings is.
Well, let's see. Well, we should probably wrap it up. But
let me just Google this.
If someone is, yeah. That's just off the top of my head. I might be completely wrong, thinking about someone else.
Oh, is this that fucking girl who sang Friday?
No, that's...
Oh,
Hey, what the fuck, dude? Come on. It's Rebecca
That looks like the girl who sang Friday.
It's Rebecca Black. Do you not, respect your internet history?
Apparently not.
I guess not. God. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's correcting me. That's Rebecca Black. This fucking looks like Rebecca Black. Let me pull it up. This looks like Rebecca Black. Look at that.
Let's see. Oh yeah, I think I pulled this up before. Yeah, if I remember this correctly.
That looks just like Rebecca Black. I don't give a fuck what anybody says.
I can see it. I can kind of see it, yeah. But yeah, so there were some complications because she was on puberty blockers for a while. But it's still, so her doctor says it's better than what I hoped for. So.
Well. Okay, guys, I think we're going to wrap it up there. LSP, if you want to jump in and chat with us for a minute, I'll stick around for about 10, 15 minutes. Rob Schmurder says, do something productive with your money. I'm saving it to buy a house, so I guess that's pretty productive.
That'll do it.
Guys, if you want to post your link in the chat so these people can go check you out, you can do that. But I'll see y'all in an hour for THEPRE GPP GOT stream on Drunken Uncle's channel. we'll see you over there. Get ready for the series finale of the Game of Thrones, guys. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you to Justin
Yeah,
for
thanks, man.
coming, having a conversation. Oh, there you are. Let me throw a wrench on you. Thank you to Justin for coming and have a conversation. Thank you, chat, for the donations and coming and hanging out.
Yeah,
You guys have
thanks for having me.
And I will see you all in an hour on Drunken Uncle's channel. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
We are clear.
Sweet. Awesome. Cool. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.